Okay, let's face it. Data management isn't exactly the coolest thing to talk about, but it is arguably the most important part of any photographer or filmmaker's workflow. Because even if you're the most talented creative or artist in the world, if you can't actually save the things that you've just made, then what good is it? So today I want to unpack the workflow that I've been using for the past 5 years in my own business to safely and securely manage and back up all of my data from start to finish. This video does not have a sponsor, but I will be talking about some SanDisk and G Drive products throughout it. And some of those products were gifted to me recently by SanDisk, which was actually a pretty cool experience for me because I've been using SanDisk products for over a decade now. So for them to reach out and gift something like that to me was really flattering. They do not know that I'm making this video. They have no say over it at all, but I just wanted to make note of the fact that some of these products were gifts. This video is going to be broken up into 3 distinct parts. Number 1, we're going to talk about where the data starts. Number 2, where it's backed up when you're traveling. And number 3, where it is backed up long-term in archival ways. Let's travel to each of those locations now. First things first, data starts inside of your camera. So if you're on set like we are right now, you need to be using good cards that are going to be fast enough to keep up with the camera that you're using. My primary camera right now is a Canon R5, which actually means that I'm using 2 different types of cards, a CF Express card and an SD card. As far as SD cards are concerned, if your camera takes them, I would recommend getting the UHS-2 cards. They are more expensive than UHS-1, but they also read and write a lot faster than those cards do. And for a camera like the R5, you actually need a card that fast because the files in this are so big that it can't keep up with any cards less than the UHS-2. So if you don't want your buffer to fill during a key moment that you're bursting shots through, you need to get a card that's actually going to keep up with the type of work that you're doing. Additionally, with the CF Express, those are even faster cards, and the reason the R5 has one inside of it is because it does 8K RAW in video. I never shoot that kind of video, literally ever, but it is actually really nice to have a card that's at 1700 megabyte read and 1400 megabyte write, because that's an even safer bet as far as going through different bursts with the 45 megapixel sensor in here. Regardless of what camera you are shooting on, it's important to understand exactly how much data your camera is writing for every photo or video file it's creating, and making sure you're using cards that are fast enough to keep up with that. The last thing that you want to do is be caught in a situation where your cards can't keep up with your creativity. That was a good line.
That was a really good line.
Whoa!
I thought you were thinking that was a good line.
No, I didn't have that scripted. Now, moving on to part 2 of this backup process. As soon as I'm done with a job and back at the hotel room or place that I'm staying in, I'm going to back up everything that I just photographed or filmed to 2 different locations. And these drives are going to serve as the immediate backups and as my working drives. Now, currently, because I splurged for a 4 terabyte SSD inside of my M1 Max MacBook Pro, I'm actually using that as my first place of backup. I kind of designate 2 terabytes of that drive mentally towards mobile backups on the road. And it's really convenient too because I can just work right off of that drive and it's extremely fast and convenient. But as my second backup to the one internally on my MacBook, I use this G Drive SSD. It's incredibly fast. It's about 1 gig a second transfer speeds, which is awesome. And I would definitely recommend you use as fast an SSD as you can afford. I think the Samsung T7s also have a similar, about 1000 megabyte, 1 gigabyte per second, and it just makes editing files off of it a lot more manageable, and it's just a faster way to back up all of your data after a shoot. The important part about this process is that even if I'm wrapping a photo shoot, maybe a wedding, for example, at an inconvenient time, like 1 in the morning, I'm still gonna make the backups at 1 in the morning and wait until it's done and not let that sit overnight, because frankly, it's just a good habit to be in, to be backing up data as soon as you are done with your shoot. When those 2 backups are complete, I don't yet actually format my cards. I'm gonna wait until I've delivered the photos from that project to format them. And that's part of the reason why I use such high capacity cards and have multiple versions of those cards, so that I can keep cycling between them, keep multiple projects on them at a time, and afford to not actually format those cards until the photos are delivered, which means I actually technically have a third backup, which is just the first copy that I made. The whole point of this is to make sure that your data is totally protected. So even though it might seem like overkill, it's a really good way to ensure that you're not losing any of your photos or your client's photos along the way. And that's reflected in the last step of this process as well, when I'm done traveling and I'm back home. Now, part 3, we're talking about the archival backup in this section. So once I have completed editing and delivering all of the files to the end client, I'm going to take all of the raw files and original footage and back them up to 2 of these Western Digital MyBook drives. I have 2 of these 12 terabyte drives. It doesn't really matter what brand you get so long as it is a good, well-reviewed drive and that it's high capacity. That's the whole point of this. This particular drive right here, this is a hard drive, which is different than the solid state drive I talked about in the last section. And that's okay for here because even though it's a hard drive and it's a spinning disk and it's slower than an SSD, I'm not using these drives for working off of. I'm using them as my archival long-term backup. So the speed of it doesn't matter as much as the capacity. And that's great because high capacity SSDs are absurdly expensive and high capacity hard drives are a lot cheaper. So that's why we're using them here. I keep one of these drives in my apartment and one of them at my studio. And the reason I split up these 2 backups is just in case there is a fire or a theft or some kind of disaster that would destroy both of these together. Really just separating these 2 backups is an additional way to mitigate any possibility of losing data long term. And yeah, it might sound a little paranoid, but it's just another peace of mind kind of thing. It's an extra step that you can take, just splitting up those long-term backups just to make sure that all of your data is totally safe. And in that same vein, the very last piece of software that I use in order to help maintain and back up my data is Backblaze, which is used in conjunction with one of my 12 terabyte drives that I just mentioned. This is a service that in the background is just constantly uploading new files that I'm adding to one of those tower drives. And it just kind of gives me peace of mind knowing that all of the hard copies that I'm making on these drives are also being converted into cloud backups as well, so that even if a fire did happen at my apartment and my studio, or both of these drives broke or failed or got stolen or whatever it is, all of the data on them are backed up somewhere. And if you haven't gotten that message already, the whole point of this video is to really emphasize just how important it is to make sure all of your data is totally secure. Not only to protect your memories, but to protect all of your clients' projects as well. At the end of the day, that really is the most important part of the business that we're in, and I can't emphasize enough just how seriously you should take it in your own business, especially if you're starting out. If you're learning these practices right off the bat at the beginning of your career, you are going to be destined for success long term. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this isn't a super fun topic to talk about, but I hope you found value in it, and I hope you understand just how important it is to have good data management principles in your business. If you have any questions, please comment below, and I'll talk to you in the next video.